talking about layers of the coral reef. Coral represent just one of the carbonate producing groups that contribute to reef construction. What are the others and what's their importance?
The other reef constructors are usually called the second producers or the secondary producers. And there are things like coralline algae, which is the beautiful pink things that you see when you're on a reef. So if you see a pink beautiful layer, then that's most probably a coralline algae. You've got bryozoans, and they're usually very pretty, and they're calcium carbonate structures. You've got things like foraminifera, and these come from the times of the dinosaurs and even before them. They're like little shells that contribute towards them. Now, what do they do? Why are they important? So, for example, coralline algae binds the reef. It's a binder. It's well known to be a binder. So when you have rubble, coral rubble, which is dead coral, and coral is dead because of an event, maybe it's a bleaching event, maybe, human illegal fishing practices using destructive equipment. So what does that do? Then the coralline algae goes, oh, this is a mess. Let's bring you all together. Let's bind you together, and it builds a surface by basically linking all the dead substrate together. And when it creates that surface with the help of the bryozoans and all the other secondary builders, it creates a surface area for the coral larvae to come and settle, and all the other reef larvae to settle, creating a space for the babies to attach themselves and grow. And no baby can grow if you don't create the space for it to grow. And that's what makes reefs beautiful.
So interesting. British naturalist Sir David Attenborough says in his Blue Planet 2 series, the seas are warming, rising, and becoming more acidic. It's a sobering thought that coral reefs may be lost within the next century. We all need a healthy ocean, so we must change our ways. As citizens of the world, what can we do to maintain a clean ocean in our everyday life?
I think it's living life aware of what we're doing. It's about questioning ourselves, reflecting on our actions. None of us can live a life where everything is perfect. Okay? We will always make mistakes. We might sometimes make the wrong choices, and that's okay. But what's not okay is realizing we didn't make the right choice and continuing making those bad choices. So when, for example, you're deciding to go out to have your meal, think about how much food you're ordering. Am I creating food waste? When I buy something, is it made out of natural substance? If it's not, is there a way to dispose of it? Now, if there's a way to dispose of it, most people go, oh, I'll just put it in the recycle bin. For what? We are in Bahrain, for example, but we don't have a lot of recycle plants. So what are we going to do? Throw our trash onto another country? So take our problem and throw it out and then come home and say, oh, alhamdulillah, I've put the thing in the recycle bin and they will deal with it. Well, that's not a right choice, because what you've done is you've put our problem and taken our problem and given it to someone else. Now that someone else has a bigger problem because they've got their own problems and now have to deal with our problems. And we are a global system. Coral reefs and all the ecosystems in the world are living based on a global system. It's not an individual system. And so even things like when I buy a house, on what land am I buying it on? Am I making an ethical choice? Where are my ethics? What are my ethics? And am I okay with the choices I'm making?
Yeah.
So it's all about how we live that life.
How did you first get inspired to become a marine biologist? And what has been your greatest challenge as a female in the Arabian Gulf?
So actually, when I was 8, I wanted to be an astronaut. And I was like, I'm going to be an astronaut. And I told everyone I was going to be an astronaut. And my mama, Allah yarhamha, was like, okay, we can do this. And she found a program for kids that would talk about planets in space. And I loved it. And I went to it till I was 12. And then the program shut down. And it was never really encouraging, because most people would always politely smile. They're like, "When Raidat Fada, you want to be an astronaut? Sure, no problem, okay," and laugh. And then I realized when I was a teenager that that might not actually happen because I was in Bahrain, you know, like thinking about
Space program.
yeah, it was difficult, especially during the days where I grew up there, going to a university in Bahrain that provides such a program. And then I watched a movie, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with, Free Willy. And I loved that movie. And I said, you know what? There's a line, and I still remember it until today, where after they were about to free him, and the boy asked the woman, "What are you going to do?" And she said, "I'm going to pursue a PhD in marine biology." And that word clicked in my head. I thought, marine biology, what's that? So when I searched it up, and I thought, that's what I want to do. And it was really funny because everyone around me were like, subhanallah, you're either up in space or down in the ocean. You can't be on the surface level. And that inspired me to really pursue it. And I'm very happy that it happened finally. And I'm doing what I've always wanted to do. I think the biggest challenge of being female and a marine biologist in the Arab world, the first one was the challenge to begin. It was very difficult to find that opening to begin. You know, like asking questions were not easy. And when I called to see if there were any scholarships, any sign of support, there was always like a no. And I remember I called once a governmental authority during the time. This was, I think, in 2003. And the response I got was, "We don't have any girls working here." And I said to the man, "Well, that's going to change." And a few years down the line, when I finally did come back, going out and working with the fishermen, I think was very shocking to them. And it was like, "Why are you here? Where's your dad?" And I was like, "Well, my dad has nothing to do with this. You know, I'm here, and I'm here for a professional job." And one of the biggest concerns, even working on many jobs, is there was once an incident where they needed me to go out. They needed a coral expert, and I was the only person available. And they were like, "Oh, but we need you, but we can't let you go out." And I went to ask the director why I can't. And he said to me, "I'll let you out, but can you tell me what you're going to wear?" And I was like, why is that a problem? You know, I'm going to wear a wetsuit. Yani, there are things that, you know, you don't have to worry. I've got everything under control, and this is a professional job. I'm not going out for a swim. Mm-hmm. And so it's those little things and those, I think, also stereotypes of what is this girl doing in this profession. But I'm seeing it change, especially in the last few years. Things are changing. There are more women that are going out into sea, more women divers. And that's very encouraging. Also an indication that society is changing. It's becoming more acceptable, you know, to go into these professions. And what we really need now is really support to allow the future generation to go in. We need schemes, we need scholarships that actually advocate environmental studies and marine biology and such things.
Well, I hope you will be one of the scientists in the future that could bring our attention to the underworld, because it is such an unexplored world, and it is just so fascinating how many species we still don't know about, we still don't even know exist, and how much we still need to learn about the depth of the oceans that we actually cannot reach yet. Thank you so much for being with us today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.